In today's video, we're going to be building a chat app using Stream. We'll take a look at signing users in, signing them out, sending messages, working with channels, and all that good stuff. Before we get into the specifics, drop a like down below, hit subscribe if you're new here. Let's open up a browser and head on over to getstream.io. So for those of you not familiar, Stream provides a pretty integrated plug-and-play solution where you can build pretty robust chat experiences, be it group chats, channels, direct messages, basically anything chat related, they've got you covered. So I've already created an account here, but you can create an account and get a 30-day free trial. I'm going to open up the website and click on the dashboard there. And before we dig in here, let's also open up Xcode and create a new application. So more specifically, what we're going to be building is an application called iOS Chit Chat. And you guys saw there, we're going to stick with the app template under iOS. We're going to stick with Swift as a language and Storyboard as the interface. We'll be working entirely programmatically to make sure we understand every aspect of this. So cool, so now that we've got this project created, the first thing we're gonna actually do is close this project because we need to bring in the dependencies for Stream as well as Stream's UI. So we're gonna open up Terminal, we're gonna CD into the project folder, we're gonna do pod init to initialize CocoaPods, and then we're gonna also do open pod file. And you should see text edit or your choice of editor open up. Now I've already copied the pods prior to starting recording here, so we'll just paste those in. And we've got StreamChat and respectively StreamChat UI. Now one really cool thing about StreamChat is not only, as the name implies here, did they offer the APIs for chat capability, but they offer pre-built components that are really robust and performant. So here in Terminal, let's just go ahead and do a pod install, and let's make sure we spelled that correctly. And we should see those dependencies install like so. And we should now have a file, which is our project name, .xc workspace. So open this guy up and let's just give this a run in a simulator. I've got the 14 Pro selected there, make sure everything is building and good to go. And then we'll get into the weeds of building out our project piece by piece. So I've actually got two simulators opened up here since we are going to be building a real-time chat application for all those iOS enthusiasts out there. So hence it's called iOS Chit Chat. And we should just see our empty screen here. It'll say black since we're in dark mode and we are good to go. So cool, so what do we want to do? So the outline of this application is going to be as follows, and I'll actually jot it down for myself and all y'all watching so we all are on the same page. So first and foremost, we're going to want a login type screen, basically the initial screen that the app launches to. We're going to want a list of channels as well as chats, any direct messages or group channels that we are in. And if you're not familiar with channels, not to worry, I'll be talking through that concept momentarily. And then we also want to be able to message, and we want to be able to create new chats/channels. And maybe we want some settings, right? This is where we can perhaps have our log out functionality. So this is going to be the overview of what we are going to put together. Now, before we start actually writing some heavier code out, we're going to get rid of the storyboard since we're doing everything programmatically. So let's go ahead and click on the storyboard file here, right click, delete, and we're going to move this guy to the trash folder. And respectively, we want to go to our project here, jump to info, and we want to get rid of some entries here. So let's see, there should be two entries here that we're looking to get rid of, both of them that specify the storyboard. So here we have main storyboard file base name. Let's get rid of that. And then there is also going to be another one called application scene manifest. We're going to open this guy all the way down until we get to the very bottom here. I will delete the entry where it says main. Now that we've gotten rid of the storyboard references in our scene delegate, we actually need to tell our project, hey, once we start up, what view controller should we go and display? So we're going to change this to be a window scene. And let's create our window by saying this is a UI window with a window scene, surprise, surprise, and we'll pass on that window scene. At the bottom here, we're going to say self.window is going to equal window. And in the middle here, we'll create our view controller that is going to be responsible for going and showing some UI on our screen. So this is going to basically be just our default view controller that our project templates gave us. And we will go ahead and say the windows root view controller is this view controller, just like so. And actually what I'll probably go ahead and do is actually wrap this inside of a navigation controller so we have a nice bar at the top with the title. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll jump into the view controller and let me just toss a background color in here and a title to make sure we've got something showing up. So we're going to call this iOS Chit Chat for the title. And the background here is perhaps going to be, let's do secondary system background, which is a bit of a different color than white or black based on the theme you are running in. So I think we'll see like a lighter colored background, hopefully momentarily. Let's see if we see it. Looks like we don't see it quite yet. And let's try that one more time. Let's make this maybe red. And we're going to debug all this together, hand in hand, so not to worry. All right, so we still don't see it. That leads me to believe that we are not, in fact, actually properly setting up this controller. Let's see what's going on. So here we're creating our window. What I forgot to do here is we want to say on the window, we're going to say, hey, make key end visible. And that's how we actually get this guy to show up. All right, there is our red screen. So we'll go back to the view controller and let's change this back to be the secondary system background. Okay, cool. So we've got something showing up, looks somewhat all right. We're going to probably make this look a whole lot nicer, so stick with me here. Before we build out some nice UI, let's talk a little bit more about Stream and what we need to do here. So the first thing that we want to actually do is on the dashboard, we're going to create an app. So we're going to create an app here, and it's going to ask us to fill in some information. So we're going to do iOS. Let's call it iOS Chit Chat, like so. And here we can do feed server location. Now this is essentially where things are going to be hosted. For the sake of this video, we're going to stick with Ohio since we are in the States. And I believe US East for the chat data storage location. These can't be changed later as it says right below for both of these. So, I encourage folks to read up on this for your production app if that's what you are building. But for our environment here, we'll stick with development since we are developing today. And we'll create our app and move along. So what do we actually need from here? So in the dashboard, we can configure a variety of things. Specifically, what we're going to want to grab is the key down here. So we have access keys, and we're going to be generating tokens for users that I'll talk through in a moment. But I do want to call your attention to the fact that there's a bunch of things you can configure in here, right? So you can configure webhooks for when messages are sent. So we've got pre-sent here. You can configure push notifications, Amazon Simple Queue service, which is a backend construct. And there's a variety of other things you can go through in here. You can take a look at, disabling auth checks. I advise doing this for development. I'm going to do so right here. And then there's also ways to explore, what your usage looks like, how many messages being sent, how many users, etc., etc. So cool. So what do we want to do? We're going to grab our app access keys, which I'll just copy from right here. This is super, super secret. Please don't share with anybody. Let's jump on over to our project. I'm going to create some folders on the left here to organize things a little bit. So first and foremost, we're going to have some controllers in here, our view controllers. Next up, we are going to have some views. So let's do some views. And then we'll have perhaps some models for our data types. And finally, what I like to call as managers, we're going to have some singleton manager type objects that we are going to be working in. And then maybe we'll want to create an other folder for all the stuff that doesn't fit into those. That way we'll stay nice and organized. So I'm going to drag app delegate into others. Let's move scene delegate there as well, just like that. And let's say our view controller can go into controllers. I guess asset can go into others as well. Lawn screen, sure, others, let's do it. And then the plist we'll leave put for now. So we're going to open up in chat the manager folder. We're going to open up a new file and we're going to call this chat manager, and it's going to be a Swift file. And this is where we're going to keep all of the logic for interacting with Stream as well as Stream UI. So we're going to import StreamChat, so I should say StreamChat and StreamChat UI more specifically. And let's also go ahead and import StreamChat UI. Cool, so what is this going to be? This is going to be a singleton object that lets us interact with all chat related good stuff, right? So we're going to create a static constant for shared, which will be chat manager. Now, similarly, the other thing that we want to do is reference the chat client in here. And chat client is something that StreamChat provides for us to go ahead and actually do a variety of things and interact with the chat backend services, right? So things like connecting users, things like creating channels, etc., etc. So we're going to want to first and foremost add a API for setup, and setup is going to go ahead and create this chat client for us. So if we go ahead and say client is going to be our chat client, you're going to see that it has a constructor and it takes in a config with a API key like so. And this API key is simply a string that we just copied, and we'll paste that guy in right there. Now this is local to this function at the moment, and we're going to need this from a variety of other functions that we write out in here. So let's actually create a private constant in here, or variable I should say, a property that we can actually assign to. So we'll say our client is going to be chat client, and this client will be force unwrapped, since we are going to assign to it, and making it optional will just make it a little bit more hectic for us to work through. So here what we can now go ahead and do is just say self.client is our client. Alrighty, cool. So let's stub out some functions that we're going to need once we start building out our UI, since not a whole lot going on here quite yet. So the first thing that we are going to need is ways to authenticate, right? So that includes signing in users, signing out users, the whole shebang. So let's do a func, and we're going to say sign in, and let's lowercase that n there, with username, and it's going to be a string, and perhaps we'll also do here a completion handler. And this is going to be escaping. We're not going to really pass anything back, but maybe we'll pass a bool for success or failure. And the other thing we're going to want is a simple way to just sign out here. And perhaps we also want to know if we are signed in. So we're going to say is signed in, because it'd be kind of strange if we had to make the user sign in every time they opened the app. We'll just do false for now. And the last thing that comes to mind is current user. We're going to want to get the current user out of our singleton here if one does in fact exist. So cool. So this is how we are going to sign the user in, out, figure out what is going on in terms of what user is signed in, so on and so forth. We're also going to want some functionality for chats, right? So we're going to want a section here, what I'm going to call channel list, as well as we'll call it plus creation. So maybe here we're going to create a function. We're going to say public func create channel list, and it's going to return a view controller. And for now, inside of here, we'll just do return a base view controller. And similarly, we're going to want another method here, and this is going to be create new channel, and this is going to take in a channel name that we'll be using momentarily. And I guess once this is created, we could have a callback, but we can just leave it empty for now. So cool, so we're in pretty good shape in here in terms of what we need. Let's start building out some UI and talking about how we're going to authenticate users. And actually, before we even get into the UI, one thing that I want to call your attention to is the documentation here that I'll link below for access tokens and user authentication. So this documentation outlines basically a concept of a token provider, and the fact that when you from the front end, your app, you type in a username or some credentials, your backend will be responsible for generating a token so you can securely connect and authenticate your user to StreamChat. Now, because we're focusing on iOS today, we're not going to be actually building out that backend component. What's really nice about the way that the StreamChat folks have set this up is we can generate a variety of tokens here. And you can see I was playing with this earlier. We can generate a variety of tokens here and use them in your application. So we can totally ignore what's going on here. We don't want this. We don't want this secret. We're going to be typing in our own stuff momentarily from the app that we have generated here. You can see there is in fact a secret here, as well as our client key, our API key, I should say. And we're going to use tokens that will hard code into the application. So with that out of the way, let's build out a screen here where we can type in a username and hit sign in. So let's jump to our view controller, and I'm going to first actually start by calling this perhaps login view controller, and I'll also rename it here, and I'll make this class final. And I'm going to jump to the scene delegate and also change this to be login view controller. Let's name things as accurately as possible, since this app will be getting larger very quickly, so we want to make sure we are in good shape. So that all being said, let's create a function here, and this is going to be add constraints, and we are going to want to create some UI here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is create a username field, and this username field is going to be a UI text field, And this is where our user will type in their username, and this could be anything since, we are essentially making a way for folks to chat in larger channels. Think something along the lines of Slack or group chats, So here we're going to create a field. It'll be a UI text field. We'll return it, and we're going to make this look a little bit nicer. So let's figure out how to go about do this. We're going to do a placeholder, and this is going to be username with a few dots. We are also going to say auto capitalization perhaps is going to be none. And we are also going to make sure that autocorrect is turned off since, folks have some silly usernames. And we also want a left view, otherwise the cursor will be up against the left edge of the field. So here we're going to do a left view mode as well as the left view itself, which will just be a basic view with a frame. And here we'll do 0, 0, maybe a width of 10 and a height of 50. Just like so. Now we're going to want to apply some constraints to this guy. So let's go ahead and also say translates. That's not what we want. We want translate masks, auto resizing mask in constraints. We're going to set this to false. And that's basically our field. So here we're going to go and add it as a subview. And we're going to want to add constraints. But also once the app launches, perhaps we want the keyboard to just appear automatically, because that would kind of be nice instead of the user having to unnecessarily tap. So we'll override view did appear, and we are going to say become first responder. Let me set up some constraints and let's see how this is looking, and we will adjust as needed. So we're going to activate some constraints. We're going to say username field dot top anchor is going to be a constraint equal to the view dot safe area layout guide top anchor constants, and maybe I'll move it down 50. And let's just copy and paste that a few times. This one I'll make negative, and this last one actually I'll get rid of. This is going to be the left anchor, the right anchor, and don't forget to change it over here as well, left anchor and right anchor. And finally, we want to provide a height for this guy, so it's not 0 or an unlimited height. So we'll say height anchor is going to be a constraint equal to a constant of 50. So I know that was a lot of talking and typing. Let's give this a run, make sure we haven't, broken anything yet, and let's see how we're doing. So cool, so we've got a text field showing up there already, and I like how it looks, though it'd be nicer if there was like an outline so I actually saw where the field started and ended. So what I might actually do here is I might make the background color system background, and the fields here, let's actually go ahead and make this, let's see, background color. Here we'll stick with the secondary system background. Let's go ahead and give this a run and see how it looks. All right, I think that looks pretty nice actually. We can actually see it's pretty clear where the field is, and the background is separated from it. So let's say I wanted to type in a username, and perhaps I want my username to be I don't know, Steve Jobs, and I should have probably a button below this that will actually go and let us sign in. So let's create that button. So what we're going to do is we're going to say private let, and this is going to be a button of type UI button. And we'll go ahead and create an anonymous closure similar to the one above that we just wrote out. And here, let's make this look a little nicer. We'll perhaps do a background color of system green, because green buttons look pretty nice. We're going to say translates, once again, auto resizing mask into constraints as false. So we'll be adding some constraints. Let's also set a title, and we'll want a title color of white as well. So let me get that out of the way so we can actually see it. And let's set a title here of continue, and we'll just capitalize it so it looks a little more prominent. And let's see, I think that's all we really want. Let me actually also give this a nice corner radius, since that always makes things look a little more polished. So corner radius, and we can say here masks to bounds is going to be true. So now that we've got this button here, similarly, we're going to add it as a subview, and we want to give it some constraints here as well. So here, let's make sure we add our comma. Let's go ahead and say button dot top anchor, that's not how you spell top anchor, is going to equal our username field bottom anchor. So essentially our from the bottom of the username field, and we're going to add some spacing of perhaps 20 points. We are also going to say that this button has a left anchor, which is equivalent to the left anchor of our super view, so just view, with a little bit of space of 20, similar to our actual field. And for our field, I believe we actually did 50. So let's actually make that 50 as well, so it's nice and consistent. And we'll do the same thing, except this side will be the right anchor. This will be right anchor as well. And finally, let's go ahead and give this guy a height similar to the field and give it a run and see what this button actually looks like. So we'll give it a constant of 50. Hopefully no typos. Go ahead and give that a run, and cool, we've got our button. And it's a little bright, but we won't fuss with the color too much so we can get at the good stuff and build out chat. So cool, so once the user taps on this button, we want to basically sign them in and create a user, right? We want to connect a user. So what we want to do is attach a handler to this button. So we're going to say add target self, and the selector will be did tap continue that we'll implement momentarily. And the action here will be, or the event I should say, will be touch up inside. Let's come down here and create this function. And inside of here, what do we actually want to do? Well, the first thing we want to do is say, hey, username, get rid of the keyboard, or username field, I should say. The next thing that we want to do is get the actual text out of the username fields. We'll say username field.text. We'll validate that it's not empty. Otherwise, we'll return here. You know, in a production application, you'll want to show an error or a pop-up and say, hey, you got to type in a valid username, but we'll just stick with that. And here, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, chat manager shared the functions we added earlier. We're going to say sign in, and we're going to say sign in with this username, not field, which is going to be text that we got up above. And completion here will tell us if we were able to successfully sign in. Right, we're gonna say guard success, and once we've signed in, we basically want to take user to chat list, right? And we'll work on this in a second. Let's actually get the user to sign in. So that all being said, let's jump to our chat manager. Now I mentioned earlier that, you know, generally you would create tokens in your backend, right? So you would go to your backend and you'd make an HTTP call to your backend, and your backend would generate it. Now we're going to be manually generating tokens here for development purposes, of course. So let's actually create a dictionary inside of our chat manager, and I'm going to call this tokens. And this is going to be a dictionary of a username. So we'll say Steve Jobs token, and then we won't want other username, right? Since in a chat app, we do need at least 2 users. So let's go ahead and go with Mark Z. So Mark Zuckerberg is going to also be using this chat app. So let's create a token here. So I'm going to refresh this page. Let's actually scroll to that section again. And it looks like it has already pre-populated our secret here. Let's jump back to this tab and make sure that secret is the same one here. I believe it is. Yep, it in fact is. And we're going to type in the user ID here. Now, I know I keep using the term username. I'm using it interchangeably with user ID. When you create a user object with StreamChat, you can actually specify a bunch of fields like their image URL, additional attributes, their name, etc., etc. So let's go with Steve Jobs, make sure I spelled that correctly. And here's the token that it gave us. We're going to take this guy. Let me make sure I get that first letter there as well. And I'm going to toss it right into here. And it's quite lengthy, which is expected. Nice and secure. And let me also just do the other one since we're in here already. So I will go and do Mark Z just like that. And let's go ahead and grab this token. And I'll toss it in like so. So looking pretty good. We've got our tokens here. We've got our username, or our user IDs, I should say. And let's actually implement the sign in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, username, make sure, let's spell that correctly, hey, username, make sure you're not empty, because if you're empty, then we know we can't really do anything, and we're just going to run into a whole host of issues. So we should just stop trying to sign in. We'll say completion false, something went wrong. Now that we know that we've got a username, what we want to go ahead and do is on our client, we're going to say we want to connect a user. Now I'll call your attention to the fact that there are a variety of methods here. There's connect user, there's connect guest user, you can actually connect anonymously. We're going to connect user with user info and a token here. And we already know that it's going to work, but you could optionally do the completion handler as well. Actually, we might actually do that. So let's actually do the completion handler as well. So here what we want to do is we want to pass in the token that we know we have above. And we also want to pass in this user info model object. So we'll create this, and this gets created with an ID. and a bunch of optional fields here. So we're going to do ID and name. Those are the two that we're going to be working with. And we'll do username here. And similarly, we are also going to do the same thing for the name. So let's say the name is also the username. So now that we've got that, we want to get the token, and we want to get the token from that dictionary. So here we're going to go ahead and say, hey, guard left the token in tokens for the username, and we're just going to lowercase it in case, we do type it in with, all capitals or a single capital. And if we're not able to get that token, we should also call the completion handler and say something went wrong, false, we failed. So now that we've gone ahead and said connect user here, and we've passed in this token, and it's yelling at me because we want to actually create a token with a string literal, we are actually connected at this point to the StreamChat account for this particular user. And what I'll go ahead and do here is, once we're done with this, we also want to implement the completion handler. So let's do that. So there's a completion handler. And this guy takes a optional error, like so. And essentially, if we don't have an error, we can assume that everything went okay, and we can pass back true. So we're going to do completion error equals nil. So if error is nil, nothing went wrong, no error was thrown, we are good to go. We'll pass back true in that case. Now, once we pass back true, we want something to happen, right? We want to actually present the UI for the logged in user, right? The chat list, essentially. Now, before we even do that, let's fill out some of these other methods here, since they're fairly easy to fill out and we can get through it quickly. So for signing out, we're going to say, hey, client, first disconnect, and then, hey, client, log out. Nice and simple, literally 2 lines of code, can't get simpler than that. So for is signed in, we're going to say, client, do we have a current user ID? So we'll say, if we have a current user ID, if this doesn't equal nil, that means we are in fact signed in. And the reason this is important is this is how we are going to check if the user should see this login screen, or if the user should go directly to their channel list, aka the chat list. So current user here, we're just going to return basically this in case we ever need it anywhere in our app. And let's pause there for now. Let's go ahead and give this a run, make sure everything is building and good to go. And what I'll actually do is, over in the console here, I'll bring this up, and in our login controller, let me just print, if we do get a successful login. So did log in, and if the user does successfully log in, we want to call a function, and we'll call maybe this function present chat list. Alrighty, and here we are going to say present chat list, and we want to do it on the main queue, since we are going to be interacting with UI and we don't want to do that on a background queue. So we'll go ahead, and here we are going to say weak self, so we don't retain memory and cause a memory leak. Now, respectively, in here, we want to create that chat list and present it, but also once the app actually launches and gets to view did appear, we're also going to say in here, hey, if chat manager.shared and is signed in, we want to once again present the chat list, and maybe we'll do animated false if we come from here. So let me actually extend this function down here. This will be animated of type Boolean, and by default, it'll be true, right? Because if we're presenting this once the user signs in after typing, we want to see a nice animation, but once the user opens the app thereafter, we just want to go straight to that chat list. We don't want to have to see this in an animation over and over. So let's go ahead and give this a shot, and let's see what's going on. All right, so let me just go ahead and double check my username. So it looks like we're actually crashing here already. And let's see what's going on. It's because we never actually called that setup function here. So super important, so I missed that already. So let's actually jump into our app delegates. And as soon as our app launches, we'll say chatmanager.shared.setup. And once again, to refresh your memory, in setup, we're actually creating that client and assigning it. And this client is super duper important since everything is going to run through this. Let's try that one more time. All right, no crashing, beautiful. And let's actually sign in, and we can see here we have Steve Jobs and Mark Z. So let me actually use Mark here. We'll say Mark Z, and I'll hit this, and let's see if we get a print here. So we did in fact get a print here, did log in. And the other thing that I'll also add a print to back in the login view controller is, let's add this into here. and we'll say should show chat list. And when I rerun the app, we should see that printed out because we should remain signed in, which in fact we do. But of course, we don't see that chat list yet. So let's actually work on getting that chat list to appear. So we're going to jump back to our chat manager, and down here, I believe we already stubbed it out. We want to create a channel list for the current signed in user. So the way that we are going to accomplish this is, first we're going to make this private. So we are able to get the current user already. And the reason that that is important is we are going to say that we first want to get the channel list by saying client, and we can say, give me the channel list, and let's see if I can find the appropriate one. So we're going to have a channel list controller, and this is going to take in a query. Now this query will take in a subsequent filter, and we're going to say, basically, give me the channels that I am a part of, right? So here we can take in a filter and a scope, and we want to find the one where we are a member, right? So we have contains, autocomplete, equal, exist. And if we keep reading down, there is one that is specific to contains member user IDs. Now, again, just as a refresher, we're using the username as the user ID already. So here we're going to get the current user out. We're going to make this nullable. And here we're going to say guard let ID is going to be current user ID. And if we don't have it, we'll simply return nil. And here what we can do is pass in a set of IDs, which will just be our ID. Basically create a list for our particular user ID. Now, one thing that I want to draw your attention to is even though this says controller, this is not a view controller. This is something that I think could be a little ambiguous. So just to call that out specifically. We will be using this list in a moment, but before we forget, let's do list synchronize. This is very important for actually receiving updates, live updates, I should mention, for the thing you're working with. This call will exist for a variety of objects within StreamChat. Now to create the actual view controller, there is a chat, I believe channel list VC is what it's called. There it is. And we can simply create this, and we're going to assign the list as the content for this particular controller. And finally, we'll return that view controller. We should see this error go away, hopefully momentarily. And let's see what the issue is here. So it looks like this is not very happy. Cannot assign value of type chat channel list controller to type chat channel list controller. Let's see, this is chat channel controller. I see what happened here. We actually want the chat channel controller. So let's do this one more time. So this should be chat channel list, and this should be chat list. Whoops, let's try that one more time. Let's go here and do chat list VC, and we want the chat channel list VC. So slight naming differences, but just be careful there since it's super easy to mix them up like I did so myself. So now when we give this a run, we should see this presented once we add this call to the login controller. So back on over here in this function that we've already defined, we're going to say, hey, guard let VC will be chat manager shared. And from this shared instance, we're going to say, go ahead and create this controller. And now that we've got this controller, we probably want to present it. So we're going to say present VC animated true. Let's give this a run and let's see if we see something being presented. Now we did pass an animated true here, and that's not what we want. We want to pass in the parameter, and we should see this presented just like that. Okay, so it's definitely being presented. It is showing up, and a couple strange things going on. We can dismiss it, which is not good. We don't see any UI up here, just looks like an empty screen, so what the heck. Makes a little bit of sense since we haven't created any chats yet, but let's take care of this dismissal problem. We probably also want a nice tab bar at the bottom so we can go to settings and our chats and navigate around a little bit. So let's actually start creating some of these other controllers we're going to need. So the first one we're going to create is going to be a settings view controller, which will be a Swift class, just like that. And I'll just create these and we'll work on them one by one. The next one here is going to be a tab bar controller. So this will inherit UI tab bar controller. I'll say tab bar view controller, just like that, and go ahead and create that. And let's see, what else are we going to need? I guess that's it for now in terms of what we'll need. Let's actually set up this controller. So here we're going to say set up view controllers, and we're going to want two tabs here, and we're just going to abstract it into this function so it's nice and organized. And we can say set view controllers, just make sure it's not named as same as setup. And here we're going to have two navigation controllers, nav1 and nav2, animated true. Now the first view controller that we're going to have in here, maybe I should call it settings, will be the settings view controller that I just created. And let's create nav1 and nav2. So we'll say nav1 will be a navigation controller. Let's try that one more time. And it will be a navigation, UI navigation controller with a root controller, just like that. And the first root controller here is going to be our chat list. And we're going to pass that in momentarily via the constructor. Now we'll do nav2 here, and this is going to be for settings. So let's pass in settings. And this should basically be good to go. Now, like I mentioned, we want to actually take in a view controller, which will be our chat list. So we'll take it in via the initializer here. We'll say self.chatList is chat list, like that. And we want this to be a local constant. And we're also going to want to bring in the required initializer that it will yell about momentarily. So if I try to compile here, we can hit this error and hit fix, and it'll stub that out for us. And let's try to do a command B again, and let's see what else we've got. So it looks like it's yelling at us because we need to do super override. So we're going to say init with nib name and bundle. And if we do a compile, we should be good to go. Now I know I ran through that a little quickly, so let's just make sure we're all on the same page. So we've got our tab bar controller here. Since once the user signs in, we want to show them a nicer UI. The left tab will be our chat list, and the right tab will be settings. Now tabs should also have some nice looking tab bar icons at the bottom there, so let's actually set those up as well. So here we'll basically do a tab bar item for both navigation controllers. They are going to be UI tab bar items with a title, an image, and a tag. So the first one here will perhaps be chat. We're going to use a SF symbol in a second, but maybe message is one of them. We'll see if that's one of them that exists. And let's just copy and paste this for nav2 as well. And this one is simply going to be settings. And I'm pretty sure gear is one of the icons. And we'll make the tag 2 here like so. So back in our login view controller, instead of presenting that chat controller directly, we're going to create one of these tab bar controllers and present that. So this view controller here is specifically for the chat list, the channel list. And here what we're going to do is create a tab bar controller. And we're going to pass in that chat list, and we're going to say, hey, go ahead and present that instead. Now, the other thing that I want to do is we want to make sure the user can't just swipe it away, because that kind of defeats the purpose of logging in. So I'll call this tab VC, and we are going to change the presentation style on this. We'll say tab VC, and we're going to say modal presentation style, and we want this to be full screen. So if we go ahead and give this a run now, let's see, we should see that we have now both of our tabs. There's settings. There is our chat channel list, and we actually have StreamChat at the top here already. No conversations in here quite yet, but we'll get to that momentarily. And we also have here our settings. And we also have some nice icons down here already. It looks like message and gear did in fact in this, which is awesome. So let's jump on over to our settings and just do some basic setup in here. We're going to set a title of settings. And we are also going to set a background color of perhaps system background. And what we're going to do in here is two things. We're going to have a label for the currently logged in user. Maybe we'll also have a person image up here and just a logout button. So let's build out that user interface, and let's actually get settings out of the way since it's fairly simple. Back in Chat Manager, I'm going to drop private from current user since we will be showing the user's name. That's where we're going to read it from. And back in settings, we want to create a function similar to what we did on login for add constraints, like so. We will call it at the bottom of view.load. And we're going to want 3 UI components here, a image, a label, and a button. So let's get to it. So we're going to create a image view here. And this image view is essentially going to be like so. We are going to return it like that. We want to assign the translates auto resizing mask property so we can apply constraints. And of course, we need an image in this image view as well, because what good is an image view without a image? So I believe person.circle is one of the images. Let's just make sure we spell this correctly. So we want a UI image with a system name, and person dot circle, I believe, is one of the SF symbols that does in fact exist. We are also going to set the content mode to be aspect fit, scale aspect fit, so we don't get any distortion. And that should be good enough for our image. Let's create a label, and this label will be for the username for the currently logged in user. We'll create a label like so. We're going to return it. We're going to say the text alignment is centered so it looks nice and organized. We'll also give this a bit of a bolder font. So we'll say system font of size 20, let's do 24 with a weight of perhaps medium. And we also want to apply constraints to this guy. So similarly, we'll set that to false. Label dot text color will be label, and that should be good enough for the label. And finally, we want our sign out button, which I'll just call button here for simplicity's sake. And we'll create this button like so. We are going to return it. We are going to assign this property once again. And maybe this button will set its title color to be red, since we are in fact going to use it to sign out. For normal, we're going to say button dot set the actual title text to sign out. Once again for normal, like so. And I believe we can start adding these as subviews. So we'll say add subview, the image view, view, add subview, the label, view, add subview, the button. And we also want the button to do something when we tap on it. So we're going to add a selector. So we'll say did tap button. And that something is going to be sign out, of course. And this is going to be for touch up inside the event. Let's create that function before I forget to do so. And just make sure it's annotated Objective-C, since it is in fact a Objective-C selector. Now what we want to do in here is say, hey, chat manager, simply sign out. There we are. And we're going to want to present the login screen again. So we've actually already done that in the scene delegate. So I can do here, I can just go here and literally copy and paste it. So here we have created this. I can actually make this a little more compact into one single line. So I can grab this entire thing, delete that line, jump back to our settings screen here. There is our controller. And we just want to present this again. So here we're going to say present VC animated true. And we're also going to say modal presentation style here will be full screen, similar to what we did for the tab bar. Let me just go ahead and build and run and make sure we don't have any gotchas here. All of our UI won't be laid out anywhere, close to appropriately because we haven't set up constraints yet, but I do see the sign out button at the top left hiding over there. So let's actually go back to our code and add some constraints. So we're going to say add constraints, or I'll say activate constraints more specifically. And the first thing that we're going to do is our image view. We're going to say this has a width anchor, and these are just going to be constants just so we get our app looking a little nicer. So here we'll do the height anchor. Here we will do the top anchor, which will be from the safe area layout guide. We'll just add a little bit of spacing, and then we also want this guy to be centered. So I can go ahead and say that the center X anchor is a constraint equal to the center X anchor, like that. Go ahead and give that a run, make sure everything looks good. Looks like we've got some problems here. Let's see what's going on. This should be view.safe area layout guide.top is what I'm looking for here. 20 from the top in particular. If we go to settings, we should see our nice icon here. Look at that, looking beautiful. Let's get that label to show up as well. Now we never assigned the text for that label. We should do so. So here we'll say label.text will be chatmanager.shared, and we want the current user, like so, which is a nullable string. And let's go ahead and do that label. So we're going to say the labels left anchor will be constraint equal to view left anchor, just like that. And we will also do the right anchor respectively. We'll just copy and paste it for brevity's sake. I will do a height anchor here, which will be perhaps, let's do like something like 80 should be good enough, hopefully. We can adjust as needed. And let's not forget to do the top anchor. The top anchor will be from the bottom of the image. So we'll say image view bottom anchor, and we're going to add a little bit of spacing, perhaps 20. And let's see how that looks. Don't forget to add your comma like I did right there. And go ahead and give it a run, and let's see how we're doing. All right, looking pretty good. We're logged into Mark Z's account apparently, which is good. That's what we did earlier. And finally, let's just position the sign out button. So we're gonna call this button dots. Let's do with anchor. Actually, we can probably get away with copy and pasting the vast majority of this. Let's copy and paste that. Let's make this button, 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 button. And the only difference here that we're going to do, or the only two things we'll change, is the height will be 50. And this is going to be from the bottom of the label instead of the image view. And we'll just add some more margin, perhaps 50 like so. And once again, don't forget to add your comma. Alrighty, there's our sign out. And if I go ahead and hit this, you'll see that we are signed out. And if I go ahead and run the app again, we should remain signed out. So awesome. We're making some progress there, looking great. Now that we've got this actually working, and we can actually hopefully log in. So let me do Mark Z again. We'll hit this, and there is our logged in state. And we see the print here once more, did log in. Beautiful. And if I run the app again, we should remain signed in. Cool, we'll remain signed in. Let me actually give this a run on the other simulator as well, since we are now getting closer to being able to run on multiple simulators. I believe the other one that I've got open is the iPhone 14. And we're going to create some chat threads. So let's go ahead and give that a run. On this side, I believe I'm logged in as, let's see, Mark Z. And I'll log in as Steve Jobs over here. All right, beautiful. Look at that. We're both logged in. And now it's time to create some actual chats. So there are a variety of concepts with StreamChat that let you do a variety of things respectively, right? So you can create Slack-like channels, you can create direct messages, you can control permissions, you can invite folks to channels, there are permissions you can manage. Literally the sky's the limit with how, versatile you want your chat experience to be. So you could build, a dating chat experience within your app if you have a dating app, or you can just do a pretty simple, community-like chat that we are building out today. So the first thing we want to be able to do is let users actually create a channel and add other users to it. So there is a simple way where we can query out a list of users based on some filters, but since we've only got 2 users, what I will actually do here is when the user creates a chat, it'll automatically, include the other user. So what we're going to do is we'll jump into the chat manager here, and let's actually implement the create new channel function, right? So here we create a new channel with a name. This will serve as the ID as well as the name for the channel. So we're going to want to do this in a do catch block here, since the method can throw. And here we are going to say let result is going to be try, once again, client. And we are going to want to create a channel here with an ID. And you'll notice that there's also create a direct message channel here, but we're going to want to use this one here. And let's actually go back to this so we can look at the entire signature here. You'll see there's a bunch of optional arguments. So we're going to use the one that is highlighted here with the channel ID. We'll use the name there. You can see you can include an image URL. You can do members, which will also include, and you can also do is current user a member. Now I'll mention that a lot of these have default arguments, but we're just going to include them for completeness sake, and so folks know what is available to you. So here we want to pass a channel ID in. We're going to create this with a type of messaging, and the ID will simply be the name passed in as an argument, or the ID I should say will be the name. The next thing that we want to do in here is use the name property like that, which will just be a name. And let's see, I believe members is in here. We're going to want to include these momentarily. This is a set of user IDs. And is current user a member? Of course, true. We want to make sure we're included. If something goes wrong here, we, in our case, are simply going to just print out, a string with the error. But if nothing goes wrong, we're going to go ahead and say results. There's that synchronize again that I mentioned about, earlier in the video. So pretty important that you call this so things actually update. All right, let's see how to actually get members. So we want to include user IDs. So all that we want to do is we're going to get the keys out of here, and we're going to filter out our own key. So what we can do is we can say let keys is going to be tokens.keys, and we are going to say go ahead and compact map, and we will return $0, basically the username, if it doesn't equal the current user's name, which is essentially this. So let's actually come up here and do this. We'll say guard let current, and this current is going to equal this current user right there. And then what we can do is we can say token. So let's actually make this even simpler. We can say filter, and we'll say, let's try that one more time. We'll do filter $0 doesn't equal current. And I'll add a return here, and we will actually also print this out just to make sure we're adding the proper users. Go ahead and do a command B and make sure everything is building. Now, one thing we didn't address is, well, how the heck do we actually enter a channel name? Because at the moment, there's no way to do that. So let's take care of it. So wherever we created that view controller, we are going to implement that there as well. So here we have our view controller that we have created. And if we go back to our login view controller, you can see here that we in fact do have our VC. And this VC gets passed into a navigation controller. And that navigation controller is actually what we want to present our UI on to add a channel name. So let's start by adding a icon. So we're going to say the right bar button on the navigation item of this guy. Let's try that again. Right bar button item is going to be a UI bar button item. And we're going to use one of the system ones, and compose is a pretty good one for this use case. Target will be self. And we are going to say that the selector is in fact going to be did tap compose. Let's just go ahead and stick this function right below it here. And go ahead and give your app a run, and you should see, hopefully, if we didn't make any typos, a compose button at the top right. So let's actually make this guy work. So what we're going to do is we are going to use an alert to actually grab the name that the user supplies for the new channel. So we'll say new chat here, and we'll say enter channel name. And the type here will be a alert. Now we want to present this on top of the tab bar controller. So we are going to say presented. Let's see if we can find it. Presented view controller. And on top of this, we're going to present the alert animated true. And we want to add two buttons and a field to this. So first and foremost, we're going to say add text fields. We'll say add an action. This action here will be of title cancel, and here we're going to say the style is also cancel, and then we're going to do another one, and this is going to be create style of default, and this one is going to have a handler because we actually need to call our chat manager function that we wrote out previously. So we need to get the actual text out of our text field. So here we'll say alert.textfields.first.text. And we also should probably validate that the text is not empty. So we'll go ahead and just do that. We'll say text is not empty, just like so. And now that we've got this here, we can say chat manager shared, and we actually want to create a new channel passing in the text that we just typed in. Now, because all of the logic for updating the chat lists and all the heavy lifting is taken care of by StreamChat, this is literally the only thing you need to do, which is absolutely insane. But let's go ahead and run it so you can actually see it in action. I am going to run it on the left-hand side, and let me actually also run it on the other simulator here so we can see it live and in action. And that's basically how you create a chat app. It's pretty wild that like 90% of everything is taken care for you, if not 99%. So cool, there is our alert, and we're going to create a chat called general. And I'll create it here, and we should see it appear. So let's see what's going on. So it looks like we should see it, but we in fact don't. So we are going to debug this together in terms of what actually happened. So let's come down here. Actually, what happened is we are calling into this, and we actually returned here. So that's intentional. Let's see why that is. We're going to add a breakpoint inside of here and inside of here. And we're going to make sure that we're actually going into that function. So let's type in, let's get rid of dictation. Let's type in general. We expect to hit our breakpoint. It looks like we did not. So that implies something is not really working out properly. So let's see. Let's go back here. And let's see where this is called. So we are definitely calling this in here. Let's actually elevate this to be on the main queue. We'll say dispatch queue, main async, and go ahead and give this a run once more. Let's make sure we're getting this properly. So we're saying validate once we click on this that, I believe actually we're clicking on cancel. Did I click on cancel? Nope, I did not. So let's try this one more time. We're gonna do general, we'll hit create, and we are still not going there, which implies that something is, not working out. So let's see, we've got cancel, we've got create, the style is default, and I'm gonna toss some breakpoints in here as well since we're gonna debug all this together. All right, actually what's happening is all my code edits are running on the right, I just realized. So let me actually go ahead and type on this side. So here I'm gonna type in general and we'll hit create here. And now we'll see us hitting our breakpoints. Okay, makes sense, beautiful. Here we're gonna continue, hit the next one. Then we should move into chat manager so we can get rid of this. Alrighty, we'll move into chat manager. We should move to that print and we should see something printed out here. Alrighty, so we have should show and there it is. We're printing as Steve Jobs. Let's make sure we're filtering correctly. Yep, because we're at Mark Z and we are good to go. So let's get rid of this breakpoint. Let's get rid of this one as well. Don't need that. Whoops. Those are the two we don't need. And then for keys, we can specify keys in here like so. And it looks like it's not quite happy. So it says it can't convert a dictionary of keys here, string. So let's see why in fact that is. We'll go ahead and map this to be $0 and let's see why it's yelling at us. So this needs to be a set of user IDs, aka a set of strings. So what I can actually go ahead and do is explicitly mark this as a collection of strings, and I can mark this here as a collection of keys, like so, and it should be happy, hopefully. Yes, it is. Let's go ahead, and third time's a charm. Let me also give this a run on the simulator on the left-hand side. It's always interesting when you're developing these multi-user experiences because you got to be very mindful of the fact that you're running, the latest code on both sides. So let's go ahead and type in a channel name. We'll do general. And I'll create this guy here and let's see what is actually going on. So at the bottom here, all right, we should have created it. We should have synchronized as well. I believe we have, but I don't see an update, which leads me to believe something was forgotten. Alrighty, so in fact, I didn't have to change any of my code, which is awesome. I just had to reset my simulators. Sometimes simulators, will be simulators. So I encourage you folks to test out applications on your physical device, but I digress. If you are in the same boat as me, you can go to your simulator and up in the toolbar, hit device and hit erase. Now the other thing that I'll mention is, in our case, I'll go here and I'll just hit sign out. On the right-hand side, we have, or the left-hand side, I should say, we have Mark's account. On the right-hand side, let's sign back into Steve Jobs' account. And let's create a new channel. So let's say we're having a party. I want to create a channel for a party. I'm going to create it, and boom, it instantaneously shows up in not only my device, but the folks that I've included, which is, the only other user on this platform. So let's go in here and send a message. So let's actually say, how is the party planning going? And we can go ahead and send it and let's see what happens. And in fact, on the left, instantaneously, literally out of the box, it just works. Now, one really cool thing, or a bunch of cool things, is not only does this support a bunch of cool features like reactions, replying you saw right here. I can actually reply to this. I can say really well, but it also supports a way to send multimedia messages. So be it images, be it other stuff. So here we're going to hit this little paperclip and we can say camera, photo or video or file. So here we'll go to the camera in our simulator. We'll be a little slow here. We'll pick this nice picture here and we'll go ahead and say got these for the guests to our party here, and you'll see it's uploading here with a little percentage indicator, and you'll see the full screen image appear on both. Now the cool thing is you can also interact with all this stuff, so I can zoom in, I can tap on it on this side as well, and it's basically what you would expect out of a modern full-featured chat application. The fact that reactions are supported is pretty impressive, since there are in fact apps out there that are quote unquote mature chat platforms that actually don't even have reactions still. So That is pretty crazy. Now, the last thing that I will draw your attention to in the dashboard here is there are a bunch of ways to configure other things about your chat experience, right? So there is a way to actually upload various configurations, right? You can change the configuration file, if you want to disallow certain file types, if you want to allow particular MIME types, if you want to block some MIME types. You can also set up block lists. There's also ways where you can create profanity filters and, other filters. You've already got a profanity one here, created for you, which, I won't click into. But yeah, basically what I want to highlight here is that StreamChat really has you covered no matter what you're building, which is pretty awesome, especially in today's day and age when, everyone wants to be able to chat live with someone through your app. So that is Stream. I've got a link to StreamChat down below, 30-day free trial to build anything out that your heart desires. Take a look. If you haven't dropped a like on this video already, make sure to do so before clicking away. Subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments if you have built a chat app out yourself. I know I certainly have, and even this screen with just the messages is just an insane amount of work on your own part. So the fact that you can plug and play is really awesome. So thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.